Hello, everybody. Welcome back. This is the Free Speech Forward podcast, the show where we really try to go behind the scenes and learn more about the people who do take a stand for free speech, their stories, and what brings them to their activism. Again, we are a podcast that is co-sponsored by both the organization 1776 Forward and the Institute of Liberal Values. And today we're delighted to have again someone else from ILV on the stage here, the virtual stage, in her virtual office here with us. So I'm turning it over to my co-host Chris to let him introduce her to you all.
Yes, thanks, Joia. I'm your co-host, Chris, and we've got Pam Hayes-Bohanan here with us today. Hi, Pam.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Before we dive in, I just want to give a brief overview on Pam for our viewers and listeners. Pam has worked in libraries for 29 years and has a particular interest in censorship and book banning issues. For the past 22 years, she's been at Bridgewater State University as head of library instruction services and also teaches Spanish as an adjunct professor. A little side note, Pam is on the cusp of her retirement, so we want to give her great congratulations for that. She has, in her work, collaborated on several research projects involving libraries and source evaluation, and is now serving as an advisor to the ILV, as Joia mentioned, our co-sponsoring organization. So thank you, Pam. With that, we'll dive right into our first question. So we always like to start with kind of the origin story. Tell us how you came to defending liberal values and being a free speech advocate. Were you always that way, or did it kind of evolve over time?
I was born this way. I guess I have to credit my father, who was, I guess you have to say, a First Amendment fundamentalist. He raised us that way. It was almost a religion. I think about, as I was thinking about it, I thought, yeah, it was, my father was an atheist, and but people are born into a religion, and maybe they stay with it, maybe they don't, but likely along the way they have their doubts, right, regardless of where they end up. And I was thinking about that too, that I did have that experience as well with having my doubts. I think the first time was when I took my first women's studies course, and we talked about it was a course called Women in the Media, and I was just so outraged at having my consciousness raised about how women were portrayed, and we need to do something about this, we need to stop this. And so that was my first experience with doubt, and then a realization that not all feminists think the same way either. Some fight against pornography and some embrace it, and find that very empowering. So there's always a range, there's always internal diversity with any population. And more recently, I would say, I had my doubts when I started doing some serious research about fake news and misinformation, and feeling like maybe we need to step up and limit what kinds of information is broadcast. And again, I the realization that there is absolutely no way to keep up with that. No way. And so it's better to allow the ideas to be shared, and perhaps we need to do better educating, and allow people to think more critically about what they're seeing and hearing.
So it sounds like an evolution over time, but always keep coming back to the same place, right?
Always keep coming back.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you've ever found a way in which misinformation and fake information can be limited and still promote free speech, let us know. We all would like to know.
Wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be nice? But I don't think it can be done. So
that's right.
So why don't you tell us more then about the position you came to about why you think free speech matters, both for you personally and for society to flourish as a whole?
I've done a lot of reading and research about this, and it seems to me that whenever we limit speech, it's actually the marginalized voices that are most likely to get shut out. So, even as we see right now, as you mentioned, Chris, I do a lot of research around book banning, and there's plenty of research to be done right now, and we see that it is marginalized voices that are being most targeted, which is not to say that's the only thing that's being targeted. We do see attacks from both sides, but the majority does target marginalized voices, LGBTQ people, people of color, books with those who are written by those populations or feature characters who have those identities. And so we can see, there's no doubt that that's where the vast majority of attacks are coming from, but that it also does come from the other side. We see kind of liberal, left-wing attacks coming. Well, this book is harmful to this population, and therefore we shouldn't have this one either. And I think that really just illustrates that there's no good place to draw the line. Who gets to decide? We need to have a variety of voices, and people can choose. People can choose what they want to, what matters to them, what speaks to them. And I also always argue that even if there's something you disagree with, it's almost imperative that you find out more about it. And if it can only help you with your arguments to know what the other side is saying. And I find too with book banning, there's sort of this paternalistic side to it, where people believe that well, they can handle reading these books, and so that they can determine what is right for everyone. Sort of this, I can handle the truth, but you can't. So let me decide. I get people need to be able to decide for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, that is a recurring theme in a lot of the conversations we're having here, and certainly one of the core planks of why we support free speech at 1776 Forward and the work we do, and I know for you guys at ILB as well. So thank you for sharing that. As a educator and a leader on free speech and information issues, can you give us a little bit of kind of how you prepare to take leadership on an activism cause, whether it's public speaking, doing a research project, sharing that with others, or kind of being out there manning the barricades, so to speak, for causes of importance to you? How do you prepare for that, and any tools or tips for how you become an effective communicator for those ideas?
So I'm a librarian, so I always do my research, which does not mean simply watching a bunch of YouTube videos.
No, that was all it took.
Which is not to say there isn't good information on YouTube. Sometimes I do find useful things.
This show is on YouTube, so hopefully
for instance.
Beautiful. As is most of ILB's.
But I look for credible information on a variety of media, right? On YouTube and in peer-reviewed journals and the New York Times and wherever else I can find some credible information. I pay attention to when I find two credible sources that contradict each other, and I keep digging. And I also, sometimes do a little footwork myself, ask some people. Um, so sometimes my research involves just me looking at my old stuff. I go, yeah, I already did this. Just need to pull that up again. And, if I'm preparing a presentation, I have notes for myself. And then I practice it. I read them out loud. I make sure they sound like I'm competent. And
A
I
trickier skill
also
than we take for granted sometimes in communicates. It is important. Yeah.
I also am not afraid, I've done it enough that I'm not afraid to just, if the audience has a question and I can't answer it or I don't know, I'm not afraid to say, oh, I don't know, but I'll see if I can find out. Or that's not, something that is an area of my expertise. I'm not afraid to say that. I don't just start making stuff up.
Yeah, that's good.
So now I'm curious, especially with, this long background you have in library science and working with the library, if you could organize all the time and money that anyone could ever need, what do you think is the most important project that other library leaders or even just maybe other free speech leaders could work on to really help the cause of free speech?
It's a good question for me because suddenly, I do have way more time on my hands than I did a month ago. And I've been thinking about it a lot. And what do I want to work on? And it really, I think it came for me. It came down to a, providing better information around elections and political issues. I've been thinking maybe that I want to get involved with the League of Women Voters because I've reached out to them before. They provide information. They don't come down on one side or another. They provide information, and I think the other thing is providing better education around critical thinking issues, starting at the earliest levels and going up through. It's a lifelong thing, and I especially became aware of this with just questioning, like, is something an opinion or a fact? And as an adult, I feel like, well, of course I can determine that, except that something I learned was that the older a person gets, um, they are less likely to be able to determine certain things, distinguish certain things from opinion or fact, because we, and I'll include myself as a 60-plus-year-old, we have believed things for so long that they just seem true to us. It must be the truth because I've always believed it. And I was actually teaching a course about misinformation to a senior audience. And I, found online this little quiz, 5-question quiz, yes, is this opinion or fact? And I got one wrong. And I had to read it 3 times and I was like, oh, yeah, that's an opinion. It just happens to agree with mine. So it is as we grow older, we become more entrenched in our beliefs, and so this is kind of a lifelong thing. Like, and this is something libraries can do. Provide those kind of educational opportunities, provide resources that will help people to sift the wheat from the chaff, as we say, with information, because there's good information and bad information.
Thank you. I love that. We always love this question because it really brings out the unique perspectives and experience and expertise of each of our guests. So that, and we at 1776 Forward are huge advocates of both a lifelong learning model and the importance of critical thinking for leadership and flourishing. So thank you. On that note, we are already at our final question. And one we also really, really love for our audience benefit, which is, any tips or suggestions or advice, encouragement for anyone out there looking to find their voice and stand up and speak out, become a leader on free speech issues specifically, or, liberal values more generally, that you would give?
Read a lot. Read books, read newspapers, read magazines, read journals, read things you do not agree with. When you see something you don't agree with, try to articulate what it is that you disagree with. I lose patience with hearing people just say, they throw around the terms harmful and problematic, and again, from both sides. It comes from the left and the right, and they just use these words. Oh, this is harmful. This is problematic. Okay, so tell me why. You can't just throw around the words. If you can't articulate it, then maybe you need to think about it some more. Even if you're just doing it for yourself, it'll help you, right? The idea is that you'll be better prepared when people question you, and it'll help you prepare your arguments. I would also say the other thing that's really important is getting to politics. Vote in all the elections, not just the presidential ones. There's always this big push, for voter registration whenever there's a presidential election. That's not a bad thing. Everybody should vote. We should all exercise our rights to vote. But I think that especially now, local elections are even more important. Who's on your school board? Who's on your library board? Who's going to make those decisions about what materials you're going to read, that your children are going to read? And this all goes back to how difficult it is to get news anymore, because so many local papers have folded. It's really hard to get, to find out, even just to find out who's running. Again, I pride myself on finding out information, and knowing where to get it. And I have shown up at a voting booth and seen a question that I did not know was going to be on there. Or, wait a minute, who's this candidate who I never heard of? So it's difficult. So it is unfortunately on us to do the digging. Contact your city hall, your town hall, your county council, whatever your local body is. Find out, what's on the ballot, who's on the ballot, and then see if you can find out something about them, which again is tricky. I was pretty sure, in our most recent election, there was a contested debate, and I'm pretty sure one of the candidates had their statement written by AI. And that's a thing that's happening now.
I was going to say, yes, the new frontier of rhetoric and copyright.
Yeah. So it's difficult. So I think it's the onus is on us to find out, and you may have to Google the candidates and find out. Go onto your local town website or city website. There's usually information there, and if there's not, I would suggest that's a red flag. If somebody's not willing to present their platform.
Yeah, I definitely experienced that at the local level recently myself. So I get that. And, unfortunately, in the sense that, yes, it's more work and onus on us, but I like to say, fortunately, also that onus is coming back to us, because to your first point, being having a more informed citizenry, and frankly making informed voting or just other day-to-day leadership decisions in life is certainly an ideal we're striving for. So I love that advice. Thank you for sharing it.
Okay.
And that completes our time. We're just out of time, almost right on the dot. So thank you so much for sharing yours and sharing your views and ideas and your backgrounds. And as a reminder to all of our listeners, Free Speech Forward releases a new episode every 2 weeks on Tuesdays. So look out for our next one 2 weeks from this release. And you can find us both on YouTube and on the ILV Apple Podcast station and Spotify stations for the Dissidents podcast. We fall under that. And you can always find us at 1776forward.com or ilvalues.org. Thank you.
Thanks.